She wanted to go earlier, but the twins were still young. Or too young, let's put it that way.
A shocking twist has just hit music history. An elderly man recently appeared claiming he is Elvis Presley's secret twin brother. His face, his voice, almost a copy of the king himself. Then DNA tests suddenly came in and everything changed. Could this discovery rewrite everything we know about Elvis? Join us as we find out how true this story really is. A stranger at Graceland. That particular morning of March started like any other day at Graceland in Memphis, Tennessee. Staff members were preparing for the daily tours when a car pulled up to the main gates. An elderly man stepped out slowly, leaning on a wooden cane for support. He wore simple clothes and a worn baseball cap that shadowed his face. Security personnel approached him with standard questions about his visit. As soon as the man looked up and removed his cap, his face made everyone freeze in place. The resemblance was immediate and striking. The man had the same blue eyes that Elvis Presley made famous. His facial structure matched photographs of Elvis in his later years. Even the way he stood reminded staff of images they had seen thousands of times. The man introduced himself as Jesse Garon Presley. He spoke with a soft Southern accent that sounded remarkably similar to recordings of Elvis speaking. Security did not know how to respond to this situation. Jesse carried a worn leather briefcase that appeared decades old. He asked to speak with someone in authority at Graceland. The request went up the chain of command quickly. Within an hour, senior estate representatives arrived at the security office. Jesse sat calmly in a small room, waiting patiently. He did not seem nervous or agitated. His demeanor suggested a man who had carried a heavy burden for many years and finally felt ready to set it down. The representatives entered the room with obvious skepticism written on their faces. Jesse opened his briefcase without any dramatic gestures. He pulled out several items and laid them on the table one by one. The first item was a birth certificate from Tupelo, Mississippi, dated January 8, 1935. The document listed two male children born to Gladys and Vernon Presley. Both names were recorded clearly on the aged paper. Jesse Garon was listed as the first twin. Elvis Aaron was listed as the second twin. The next items Jesse presented were photographs that appeared genuinely old. The images showed two young boys who looked identical standing together in front of a small house. Both boys wore matching overalls and smiled at the camera. Another photograph showed the same two boys sitting on the steps of what looked like a poor rural home. The clothing and image quality matched the time period perfectly. More photographs followed, each one showing the two boys at different ages through their early childhood years. Jesse then produced a small metal toy car that showed significant wear from decades of handling. He explained that Elvis had an identical car and they would play together with these toys. He described specific memories of their early childhood in Tupelo. He recalled details about the small two-room house where the Presley family lived. He mentioned the specific location of the well in the yard. He described the inside layout of the house with accuracy that would be difficult for an outsider to fabricate. The representatives listened with growing unease as Jesse continued sharing memories. He described Gladys Presley's cooking habits and her favorite hymns. He recalled Vernon Presley's struggle to find steady work during the Depression years. He even mentioned specific neighbors by name and described their relationships with the Presley family. Every detail matched historical records that only close family members would know. The specificity of his memories made dismissing him as a fraud increasingly difficult. Jesse spoke about being separated from his twin brother when they were very young. He explained that the family faced desperate poverty that threatened their survival. Gladys and Vernon made an impossible choice to ensure at least one child would have a better chance. Jesse was given to a relative who lived in a different county. The official story became that the firstborn twin had been lost at birth. Only a handful of people knew the real truth about what happened that winter night in 1945. The physical resemblance became more apparent as Jesse spoke. When he smiled, the similarity to Elvis was startling. The shape of his mouth and the way his eyes crinkled matched countless photographs. Even his hand gestures reminded observers of Elvis during interviews. The voice carried the same Mississippi Delta accent that Elvis never completely lost, despite years of fame. Age had weathered Jesse's face, but the genetic connection seemed undeniable to everyone in the room. Jesse explained that he had lived a quiet life far from the spotlight. He worked various jobs throughout his years and raised his own family. He knew about Elvis's career and watched from a distance as his twin brother became the biggest star in the world. He never came forward because he understood the disruption it would cause. He respected the choice his parents made even though it caused him lifelong pain. He carried the secret through Elvis's demise in 1977 and through the passing of both their parents. The decision to come forward now stemmed from his advanced age and failing health. Jesse wanted the truth known before he passed away. He wanted recognition that he existed and that he was Elvis's brother. He wanted his own children and grandchildren to know their true family history. The staff members sat in stunned silence as they absorbed everything Jesse presented. The situation required immediate attention from the highest levels of the Presley estate management, because the potential implications were huge if his claims proved true. The family secret unravels. Jesse Garon Presley sat across from estate lawyers and family representatives in a private conference room at Graceland. The initial shock of his appearance had settled into careful investigation. He began explaining the circumstances that led to his separation from Elvis and the family. His story painted a picture of desperation that few people in modern times could fully comprehend. The year 1935 brought devastating economic hardship to Mississippi families like the Presleys. Vernon Presley struggled to find any work at all during those brutal Depression years. The family lived in a tiny two-room shotgun house in East Tupelo that Vernon built with borrowed materials. Gladys was pregnant and terrified about bringing children into such circumstances. When she went into labor on January 8, both twins arrived early and appeared weak. The attending doctor expressed concern about their survival chances. The family had no money for proper medical care or even adequate food. Jesse described being born first but smaller and weaker than his brother. Elvis came second and showed more strength despite also being premature. Gladys held both babies and wept because she knew their situation was impossible. Vernon stood helplessly watching his wife and newborn sons. The house had no heat except a small wood stove. They had almost no food in the cupboard. The few relatives who knew about the twins arriving began discussing options that nobody wanted to consider. Vernon's cousin lived 2 counties away and had slightly better circumstances. She had lost a child years earlier and agreed to take one of the twins temporarily. The plan was supposed to be short-term until Vernon could find steady work. Gladys chose to keep Elvis because he appeared stronger and more likely to survive. Jesse was wrapped in blankets and taken to the cousin's house within days of being born. Gladys made the cousin promise never to reveal the truth to anyone outside the immediate family. The temporary arrangement became permanent as months passed. Vernon found occasional work, but never enough to support bringing Jesse back home. Gladys visited when she could manage the distance. Each visit became more painful as she watched both boys growing. The cousin grew attached to Jesse and began resisting the idea of giving him back. Eventually, an unspoken understanding developed that Jesse would remain where he was. The official story became that the firstborn twin had passed away at birth. Jesse grew up knowing a woman he called his mother was actually his cousin. She told him the truth when he turned 10 years old. She explained that his real parents were Gladys and Vernon Presley, and that he had a twin brother named Elvis. She made him promise to keep the secret because revealing it would destroy the family. Jesse struggled with this knowledge throughout his childhood. He wondered about his twin brother constantly, but honored his promise to stay silent. As Elvis became famous in the 1950s, Jesse watched from a distance with mixed emotions. He saw his twin brother on television and felt a connection he could never acknowledge. He attended one concert in disguise and stood in the back of the venue. Seeing Elvis perform created an overwhelming sense of loss for the life they could have shared. Jesse left before the concert ended because the emotion became too intense to bear. Vernon and Gladys knew Jesse was alive, but maintained the public story about the deceased twin. Gladys carried heavy guilt about the choice she made. She occasionally sent money through the cousin to help with Jesse's expenses. Vernon visited twice over the years but found the encounters too painful to continue. The secret remained protected even as Elvis's fame grew to extraordinary levels. The family feared that revealing the truth would create a media circus that would harm everyone involved. Jesse married and had children of his own without telling them about Elvis. He worked construction jobs and lived modestly in rural Mississippi. He never sought attention or tried to benefit from his connection to Elvis. He respected the boundary that circumstances had created. When Elvis passed away in 1977, Jesse attended the funeral from a distance. He stood among strangers at the cemetery and mourned the brother he never truly knew. Gladys took the secret to her grave in 1958. Vernon maintained it until his passing in 1979. The cousin who raised Jesse passed away in 1993. Lisa Marie Presley never knew about Jesse's existence. The Presley estate had no records indicating that Jesse survived beyond birth. The official family history treated him as a tragic footnote about a stillborn twin. Decades passed with the truth buried under layers of public narrative and family shame. Jesse's decision to come forward stemmed from his terminal diagnosis. Doctors gave him less than a year to live. He wanted his own children and grandchildren to know their heritage before he passed. He gathered every document and photograph he possessed. He located the cousin's children who confirmed parts of his story, and then prepared himself for disbelief and hostility. He drove to Graceland knowing this revelation would shock everyone. He owed it to himself and to Elvis to finally tell the truth after 90 years of silence. But no one knew what was coming next. The DNA testing process. The Presley estate faced an unprecedented situation that required careful handling. Jesse's claims came with enough documentation and detail to warrant serious investigation. Estate lawyers convened emergency meetings to discuss how to proceed. Simply dismissing him seemed irresponsible given the evidence he presented. However, accepting his claims without verification would be equally problematic. The solution involved comprehensive DNA testing under the strictest scientific protocols available. Estate representatives contacted 3 separate genetic testing laboratories with expertise in forensic genealogy. Each facility had established reputations for accuracy and had handled high-profile cases previously. The decision to use 3 independent labs would eliminate any possibility of error or contamination. Each laboratory would receive samples and conduct testing without knowledge of what the other labs were doing. Results would be compared only after all 3 completed their analysis. The challenge involved obtaining verified DNA samples from Elvis himself. Graceland maintained a climate-controlled archive containing various personal items from throughout Elvis's life. Preserved hairbrushes with hair samples existed from different periods of his career. A sealed collection also contained medical samples taken during Elvis's lifetime. These materials had been carefully stored and documented over the decades. Chain of custody records existed for each item to prove authenticity and prevent tampering. Jesse provided multiple DNA samples willingly and without hesitation. He gave blood samples, cheek swabs, and hair follicles to ensure adequate material for testing. He signed consent forms allowing the laboratories to conduct whatever analysis they deemed necessary. His cooperation and eagerness to proceed impressed the estate representatives. Someone attempting fraud would typically show more reluctance about extensive scientific testing. Jesse's confidence suggested he genuinely believed his claims were true. The testing also required samples from known Presley family members for comparison. Lisa Marie Presley had passed away in 2023, but biological samples from her remained available. Her children agreed to provide DNA samples to help establish family connections. Riley Keough and her siblings understood the importance of resolving this situation definitively. They wanted answers as much as everyone else. The possibility of having a great uncle they never knew about seemed unrealistic, but needed investigation. Each laboratory received carefully packaged samples with only identification numbers. No names or background information accompanied the materials. Scientists knew only that they were conducting kinship analysis for a legal matter. This blind testing protocol ensured completely objective results. The laboratories used different testing methodologies to provide cross-verification. Some focused on autosomal DNA markers, while others examined Y chromosome lineage patterns. The comprehensive approach would reveal any biological connections with certainty. The testing process required several weeks to complete properly. Each laboratory conducted multiple rounds of analysis to confirm their findings. Scientists examined thousands of genetic markers to establish relationships between samples. They looked for specific patterns that indicated sibling connections versus more distant family ties. The accuracy rate for this type of testing exceeded 99% when done correctly. Any inconsistencies between laboratories would trigger additional investigation. Estate lawyers prepared for multiple possible outcomes. If Jesse proved to be a fraud, they would pursue legal action for attempted deception. If he proved to be Elvis's twin brother, the implications for family history and estate matters would be significant. The lawyers researched inheritance laws and examined Elvis's will for any clauses that might address unknown heirs. They consulted with genealogy experts about how such a situation might affect the existing estate structure. The first laboratory completed its analysis and submitted results to the estate lawyers. The findings were sealed until all 3 labs finished their work. The second laboratory completed testing 2 days later and sent their report. The third facility took slightly longer, but submitted findings within the expected time frame. Estate lawyers scheduled a meeting to review all 3 reports simultaneously. Jesse was invited to attend along with Presley family representatives and legal counsel. The conference room at Graceland felt heavy with anticipation as everyone gathered. 3 sealed envelopes sat on the table containing reports from each laboratory. Estate lawyers explained the protocol for reviewing results. They would open each envelope and read the findings aloud. Then they would compare the 3 reports to identify any discrepancies. The laboratories had been instructed to provide clear conclusions about the biological relationships between samples tested. The first envelope was opened and the report read carefully. The second envelope followed with similar scrutiny. The third envelope was opened last. Lawyers read through pages of technical genetic analysis, looking for the bottom-line conclusions. The results from all 3 laboratories were clear and definitive. However, the results contained information that nobody in the room had anticipated. The DNA analysis revealed connections that went beyond the simple question of whether Jesse was Elvis's twin brother. The catastrophic results, truth is revealed. The lead estate lawyer cleared his throat and began reading the conclusions from the genetic analysis reports. All 3 laboratories confirmed that Jesse Garon Presley and Elvis Aaron Presley shared a biological relationship consistent with monozygotic twins. The DNA markers proved beyond doubt that they were identical twin brothers. The genetic similarities were too extensive and specific to indicate any other relationship. Jesse sat quietly as this first piece of information was shared. His claims about being Elvis's twin were scientifically validated after 90 years of secrecy. However, the lawyer continued reading with a noticeably troubled expression. The laboratories had conducted comprehensive genetic analysis that examined multiple types of DNA markers. This thorough approach was standard protocol for establishing family relationships. The testing included autosomal DNA, Y chromosome analysis, and mitochondrial DNA examination. Each type of genetic material provided different information about family lineage and connections. The results revealed unexpected patterns that prompted the laboratories to conduct additional verification testing. The Y chromosome analysis showed something that contradicted the official Presley family history. Y chromosome DNA passes directly from father to son, with minimal changes across generations. The Y chromosome markers from both Jesse and Elvis did not match verified samples from Vernon Presley's known relatives. The genetic signature present in the twins came from a completely different male lineage. Surprising, Vernon Presley was not the biological father of either twin. The room fell into stunned silence as this information was absorbed. Jesse looked confused because this revelation shocked him as much as everyone else. He had always believed Vernon was his father despite the separation. The estate representatives struggled to process what they were hearing. Lisa Marie's children sat motionless, trying to understand the implications. The lawyer continued reading the technical details that supported this unexpected finding. All 3 laboratories reached the same conclusion independently. The probability calculations showed less than 1% chance that Vernon Presley was the biological father of the twins. The Y chromosome signature in Jesse and Elvis matched a different genetic profile entirely. The laboratories compared the twins' DNA against genetic databases to identify possible ancestral origins. The paternal lineage showed connections to families in the Tupelo area, but none with the surname Presley or any of Vernon's known relatives. The mitochondrial DNA analysis confirmed that Gladys Presley was definitely the biological mother of both twins. This genetic material passes from mother to children and showed clear connection to Gladys's verified relatives. The maternal lineage was exactly what everyone expected it to be. However, this confirmation made the paternal discrepancy even more significant. Gladys had conceived the twins with someone other than the man she married. Vernon had raised Elvis believing the boy was his biological son. Estate lawyers presented additional documentation that had been requested from county records. Birth certificates from 1935 showed Vernon listed as the father of both twins. However, DNA evidence proved this information was inaccurate. Whether Gladys knew the truth or whether Vernon knew remained unclear. The timing of Gladys and Vernon's marriage coincided with the pregnancy. They married on June 17, 1933, and the twins were born January 8, 1935. The conception would have occurred in early 1934, after the marriage had already taken place. Historical research conducted during the DNA testing period provided some context. Multiple sources documented that Vernon and Gladys went through a difficult period in their marriage during 1933 and early 1934. Vernon struggled with unemployment and reportedly drank heavily during this time. Some accounts suggested periods of separation where Gladys stayed with various relatives. These circumstances could have created opportunities for the relationship that resulted in the twins' conception. However, no documentation identified who the biological father might have been. The genetic signature from the twins suggested their biological father came from families who had lived in Mississippi for multiple generations. The Y chromosome markers indicated European ancestry with some mixture typical of Southern populations. Beyond these general characteristics, the laboratories could not provide specific identification without DNA from potential candidates. Identifying the biological father would require testing male descendants from families Gladys knew during that time period. Such an investigation seemed unlikely to produce results after 90 years. Jesse struggled to process this information about his parentage. He had spent 90 years believing he was Vernon Presley's son. Learning that Elvis was his twin brother came as validation of what he had always known. Learning that Vernon was not their biological father created an identity crisis he had not anticipated. His entire understanding of his origins had been built on incomplete and inaccurate information. The truth was more complicated than anyone had imagined. The Presley family representatives dealt with their own shock at these revelations. Elvis Presley's identity was intertwined with his family background and upbringing. The narrative about his poor Southern roots and his relationship with his parents was central to his life story. Learning that Vernon was not his biological father changed basic assumptions about Elvis's heritage. The question of who his real father was would now hang over the Presley legacy forever. The estate lawyers discussed the legal implications of these findings. Jesse's claim to be Elvis's twin brother was proven beyond doubt. However, both twins were born to Gladys outside of her biological relationship with Vernon. This fact complicated matters regarding the estate and inheritance rights. Vernon had legally claimed Elvis as his son and raised him as such. The lack of biological connection did not necessarily invalidate Vernon's parental rights or Elvis's status as his legal heir. The catastrophic nature of the DNA results stemmed from the destruction of a carefully maintained family story. The Presley family history was built on certain accepted facts about Elvis's parentage and background. Those facts were now proven incorrect in many ways. The revelation that Vernon was not Elvis's biological father has shocked fans and historians worldwide. The identity of the real father might never be known. However, the truth is that the mystery would forever alter how people understood Elvis Presley's origins and family history. The devastating implications. The weeks following the DNA results brought chaos to everyone connected to the Presley estate. News of Jesse's existence and the genetic testing leaked to the media despite efforts at confidentiality. Reporters descended on Memphis demanding answers about the secret twin brother and the questions about Elvis's paternity. The estate released a statement confirming that Jesse Garon Presley was indeed Elvis's identical twin, and that genetic testing had revealed unexpected information about their biological father. Jesse found himself thrust into public attention after a lifetime of anonymity. Photographers camped outside his hotel hoping for pictures of Elvis's twin brother. News programs ran side-by-side comparisons of Jesse's face with photographs of Elvis at similar ages. The physical resemblance became a subject of fascination for millions of people. Jesse gave one brief press conference where he explained his story and asked for privacy during this difficult time. He expressed confusion about the paternity revelations and stated he needed time to process everything he had learned. Riley Keough and her siblings dealt with the strange reality of having a previously unknown great-uncle. They met with Jesse privately and found him to be genuine and kind despite the awkward circumstances. The family resemblance was undeniable when they stood together. Jesse showed them photographs of his own children and grandchildren who carried Presley genes they never knew they had. The meeting was emotional for everyone involved as they tried to build relationships that should have existed for decades. The legal implications of the DNA results created complications for estate lawyers. Jesse had not indicated any intention to challenge the estate distribution or pursue financial claims. However, his status as Elvis's twin brother gave him potential legal standing that needed to be addressed. Estate documents and Elvis's will had been structured around assumptions that were now proven incorrect. Lawyers spent countless hours reviewing every clause and provision to determine if Jesse's existence created vulnerabilities. The question of Jesse's inheritance rights became a subject of intense legal analysis. Elvis passed away without knowing he had a twin brother who was still alive. The will made no provision for siblings because Elvis was believed to be an only child. However, Mississippi inheritance laws included provisions for certain family members even when not specifically named in wills. Lawyers debated whether Jesse qualified under these statutes given the unusual circumstances of his separation from the family. Jesse met with his own legal counsel to discuss his options. His lawyers explained that he potentially had grounds to challenge the estate distribution and claim a portion of Elvis's assets. The estate was worth hundreds of millions of dollars through ongoing royalties, licensing agreements, and Graceland operations. Even a small percentage would provide Jesse and his descendants with substantial wealth. However, Jesse struggled with whether pursuing such claims was morally right, given that Elvis never knew about it. The revelation about Vernon not being the biological father created additional legal questions. If Vernon was not Elvis's biological father, did that change anything about Elvis's inheritance from Vernon? Did it affect the legal relationship between Elvis and Gladys? Estate lawyers consulted with genetics experts and family law specialists to understand the implications. The general consensus was that legal parentage established through birth certificates and Vernon's acceptance of paternity could not be undone by later DNA evidence. Vernon was Elvis's legal father, regardless of biology. The identity of the twins' biological father became the subject of intense speculation and amateur investigation. Fans and researchers began examining records from 1993 and 1934, looking for men who might have had relationships with Gladys. Every male name mentioned in documents from that period became the subject of scrutiny. Some investigators contacted descendants of men who knew the Presley family, asking them to provide DNA samples for testing. The search seemed unlikely to produce definitive answers after so many decades. The impact on Elvis's legacy proved significant as scholars and biographers began reassessing his life story. Books were written exploring how not knowing his true paternity might have affected Elvis psychologically. Some researchers suggested that Elvis's identity struggles and relationship challenges stemmed partly from unconscious knowledge about his origins. Others argued that the paternity question changed nothing about Elvis's talent, career, or cultural impact. The debate would continue for years among Elvis historians and fans. Graceland faced decisions about how to present this new information to visitors. The museum exhibits had always included sections about Elvis's birth and family background. Those displays needed updating to reflect the truth about Jesse's survival and the questions about their biological father. Estate managers wanted to handle the presentation respectfully while acknowledging the reality of what had been discovered. They consulted with family members about how to tell this complicated story to the public. Jesse's health continued declining as predicted by his doctors. The stress of public attention and the emotional weight of the revelations took their toll on his already fragile condition. He spent time with his own family trying to help them process their connection to Elvis. He met several times with Riley Keough and formed a genuine bond with her. They discussed their shared grandfather and the strange circumstances that kept them apart for so long. Jesse expressed gratitude that the truth was finally known before he passed away. The estate eventually reached a settlement agreement with Jesse that provided him with financial support without formally acknowledging any inheritance claims. The agreement included provisions for his medical care and ensured his children would receive certain benefits after his passing. Jesse accepted the arrangement because he wanted peace rather than prolonged legal battles. He stated publicly that his goal had never been money, but simply recognition that he existed and was Elvis's brother. The mystery of the twins' biological father remained unsolved despite extensive investigation. Without additional DNA evidence from potential candidates, the question seemed likely to remain forever unanswered. Gladys had taken the secret to her grave decades earlier. Anyone who might have known the truth had long since passed away. The incomplete answer frustrated everyone but seemed unavoidable given the passage of time. Jesse Garon Presley passed away peacefully 5 months after his appearance at Graceland. He was buried in a small cemetery near his home in Mississippi rather than at Graceland. His gravestone identified him as the twin brother of Elvis Presley. The estate provided a proper funeral, and Riley Keough attended to represent the family. Jesse passed, knowing that his existence was finally acknowledged and that the truth about his relationship to Elvis was permanently established. The cost of that truth was higher than anyone had anticipated when the DNA testing began. What are your thoughts on this recent discovery? Do you think there was a mistake somewhere? Let us know your views in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe to this channel. Before you go, watch the other videos on your screen.